It was a humid evening in Lagos, the kind of evening when the air itself feels heavy, like it is holding a secret it doesn't want to share. The orange sun was slowly sinking behind the crowded rooftops of Adaeze, painting the rusted zinc sheets in gold. The streets were alive with the sound of hawkers calling out, "Gala! Pure water! Buy your plantain chips," while Danfo buses honked impatiently. Somewhere far off, the faint smell of roasted corn mixed with the smoky aroma of suya being turned on hot grills. In the middle of all this was a small, weathered compound tucked behind a row of old shops. The compound was home to the Adaeze family. Inside, the air smelled faintly of palm oil and old wooden furniture. The narrow corridor walls had cracks that told their own history of many years, many quarrels, and many tears. This was the home of Baba Adaeze, a man whose voice could fill a room even when he wasn't shouting. He was a respected man in his church, a man who believed in discipline and tradition, and he ran his household with an iron hand. Adaeze, his only daughter, was 20 years old when the trouble began. She was a bright young woman with big dreams of becoming a nurse. She had eyes that shone with life and a voice that could calm the storm. But she also had a heart that trusted too easily. She lived with her father and her younger brother, Deo, after their mother passed away some years earlier. Baba Adaeze loved his daughter, but his love was like the sun in dry season, hot, bright, but sometimes too harsh to bear. It started with whispers. One evening, a neighbor called her father aside. The woman spoke in a low voice, his words like stones dropping one by one into still water. By the time the conversation ended, Baba Adaeze's face had turned dark. That night, when Adaeze returned from her evening classes, she found her father sitting in the parlor with his arms crossed. "Adaeze," his voice was low, but there was a dangerous edge to it. "Is there something you want to tell me?" She hesitated. She knew what he had heard. She could feel the weight of the truth pressing on her chest. But she nodded slowly. "Papa, I'm expecting a baby." The room went silent. The only sound was the distant hum of generators outside. Baba Adaeze's hand trembled slightly, but his eyes did not blink. "Whose child?" he asked. She opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. She knew if she told him it was from Chaik, the young man who promised to marry her but had suddenly disappeared, it would only make things worse. "Get out," Baba Adaeze said finally, his voice cold. "Papa, please. I said get out of my house tonight. You have brought shame to me. Shame to my name. You want to be stubborn, fine. Go and meet whoever is responsible for your condition." Deo tried to speak for his sister, but his father's glare silenced him. That night, under the moonlight, Adaeze packed her clothes into an old Gonomosgo bag, her eyes swollen from crying. The streets felt colder than she had ever known. She walked away, barefoot for most of the journey, her mind numb. The months that followed were hard. Adaeze lived in Ajigana with an old school friend, Nkechi, who sold second-hand clothes at the market. The small room they shared was cramped, and the mattress smelled of dampness. She worked during the day, folding and arranging clothes, and at night she would sit by the window, rubbing her growing belly, wondering if her father still thought about her. When the baby came, a boy she named Somto, life became even harder. Chaik never returned. Sometimes she had to beg, sometimes she went to bed without eating so her son could have a small bottle of pap. But through it all, she never lost the fire in her heart. 3 years passed. The streets had taught Adaeze many lessons: how to survive, how to read the unspoken words in people's eyes, and how to keep moving forward even when the road seemed endless. She had learned hair braiding and makeup from a woman in the market, and slowly, she started her own little store. Somto was now a cheerful boy with bright eyes, always asking questions, always laughing in the way only children can. One day, as she braided a customer's hair, Adaeze overheard 2 women talking about a big wedding happening in Suralia. Something about their voices made her pause. Then she heard the name. Deo Adaeze. Her brother. Her hands froze. Her brother was getting married, and she had heard nothing. That night, Adaeze could not sleep. Memories of her father's face, his words, and the night he drove her out came rushing back. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to let the past stay buried. But another part of her, the part that had survived hunger, pain, and loneliness, knew she had to go back. She had to face him. The wedding day was bright and hot. The church in Suralia was decorated with white and gold ribbons, the sound of drums and talking filling the air. Adaeze wore a simple blue gown, Somto by her side, his small hand holding hers tightly. When she stepped into the church compound, heads turned. Whispers began. Baba Adaeze was standing near the entrance, greeting guests. His hair was grayer now, his face older. When his eyes fell on her, the smile faded. He froze, staring at the daughter he had not seen in 3 years, and the little boy beside her. For a moment, time stopped. The drums outside seemed distant. The chatter of guests faded. "Papa," she said quietly. He looked from her face to the boy, and something unreadable passed through his eyes. Anger, shock, maybe even regret. But before he could speak, Somto stepped forward and said, "Grandpa." The sound of that word was like a crack in the air. Everyone nearby turned. Baba Adaeze's lips trembled, but no words came. And then, for a long moment, no one moved. The air between them was thick, almost heavy enough to touch. Guests were watching, whispering in low tones. Some had already guessed who she was, others were asking questions with their eyes. Baba Adaeze's jaw tightened, but his eyes could not leave the small boy staring up at him. Somto's eyes were too familiar, the same deep brown that used to look back at him when Adaeze was a child. The same way she used to tilt her head when waiting for him to speak. "Papa," Adaeze's voice broke slightly, "this is my son, your grandson." A flicker of something, perhaps shame, perhaps pride, crossed his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but one of the ushers came to tell him the groom was ready to enter the church. The timing was almost cruel. Without another word, he turned and walked inside, leaving Adaeze standing there with Somto. She felt her heart twist. Part of her heart hoped for a different reaction. A hug, maybe. Tears. Something warm. But the cold wall between them was still there. Inside the church, the choir began to sing. The air smelled faintly of fresh flowers and perfume. Adaeze sat at the back, her hands trembling as she kept Somto close. She watched her younger brother walk down the aisle in a fine suit, looking grown, confident, and happy. Her eyes misted, she had missed so much of his life. When the ceremony ended and people began to leave, Baba Adaeze did not approach her. But she noticed him glancing in her direction more than once. She told herself she would leave quietly, but Somto had other plans. As they stepped out of the church, Somto suddenly pulled free from her hand and ran toward the man standing near the entrance. "Grandpa," he called again, louder this time. Everyone nearby turned their heads. Baba Adaeze froze. Slowly, he bent down to the boy's height. Why are you calling me that?" His voice was low, but trembling. "Because Mama said you are my grandpa," Somto said with a wide smile. "And I want to know if you like football." "I like football." The old man's lips trembled again, but before he could answer, someone called him from across the compound. He straightened up and said to Adaeze, "Wait for me after the reception. We need to talk." Then he walked away. At the reception hall, the atmosphere was lively. Jollof rice and fried meat filled the air with a warm, inviting smell. Laughter echoed as people clinked bottles of malt and mineral. Adaeze sat quietly at a corner table, avoiding the curious eyes of old family friends. Somto ate happily beside her, unaware of the storm around them. When the celebration ended, and most guests had gone, Baba Adaeze walked up to her. His voice was quiet. "Come." She followed him to the side of the building, where it was quieter. The sound of generators hummed in the background. "Why did you come today?" he asked, his face still unreadable. "I didn't come to fight, Papa," she said softly. "I came because I wanted you to meet your grandson. I thought maybe you had forgiven me." He looked at her for a long time, then shook his head slowly. "Forgive you? You think it is that simple? You shamed me, Adaeze. You went against everything I taught you." Her voice trembled. "Papa, I was young. I made a mistake. But I didn't die from it. I worked. I struggled. I kept my child alive. And all this time, I kept wishing I could hear your voice again." There was a pause. His eyes softened just a little, but then he said something she did not expect. "There's something you don't know about the night I sent you away." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" Before he could answer, a voice interrupted. It was Deo, her brother, coming toward them. "Papa, the couple is leaving, they are waiting for you," he said. Baba Adaeze gave her a long look. "Come to the house tomorrow." Alone. Then he turned and walked away with Deo. The next day was cloudy. The streets of Suralia were damp from last night's rain, and puddles reflected the grey sky. Adaeze left Somto with Nkechi and made her way to her father's compound. Her heart pounded with each step. When she arrived, the gate was slightly open. Inside, the compound looked smaller than she remembered. The mango tree in the corner was still there, its leaves swaying gently. She knocked on the door, and her father's voice called, "Come in." Inside, the parlor was almost exactly the same, the old wooden chairs, the family photos on the wall, the faint smell of camphor. He sat in his armchair, his hands clasped. "Sit down," he said quietly. She obeyed. He took a deep breath. "That night, when I told you to leave, I was angry." "Yes. But I was also afraid. Afraid because I knew something you didn't." She frowned. "What?" He hesitated. His voice was low when he spoke again. "The man who left you, Chike, he came to see me before you told me you were pregnant. He told me something that made me fear for you." Adaeze's eyes widened. "What did he say?" Baba Adaeze looked at her for a long time, then said, "He told me your life would be in danger if you stayed close to him, and that there were people watching him." "Dangerous people?" Her mind spun. "Papa, what are you saying?" He leaned forward. "I'm saying, Adaeze, the night I drove you away, I wasn't just angry. I was trying to keep you safe." She sat frozen, her thoughts racing. Safe from what? But before he could answer, there was a loud knock on the door, urgent, almost violent. They both turned to look. The knock came again, louder this time, rattling the thin wooden door. Baba Adaeze's eyes narrowed. "Who is there?" he called. There was no answer. Only the sound of heavy breathing on the other side. Adaeze felt her heart start to race. The knock came again, and this time, a deep voice said, "Open this door. We know she is inside." Adaeze froze. "Papa, they are talking about me." He stood up quickly, his old legs surprisingly steady. "Stay here," he whispered. He moved to the door and opened it just slightly, enough to see who was there. Two men stood outside. They were not from the neighborhood. Their clothes were simple, but there was something in their eyes, hard, sharp, dangerous. One of them had a scar running from his ear to his jaw. "What do you want?" Baba Adaeze asked, his voice calm but firm. "We came for the girl," the scar-faced man said. "Tell her to come out quietly." Baba Adaeze's hand tightened on the door. "She's not here." But Adaeze had already made the mistake of stepping forward to see what was happening. Her face appeared in the narrow gap, and the men's eyes locked on her immediately. "That's her," the other man said. Before anything else could happen, Baba Adaeze slammed the door shut and bolted it. "Go to the back," he shouted. Adaeze's legs were trembling. "Papa, who are they? What do they want from me?" He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the back door. "Those are the people I was trying to protect you from 3 years ago. They have been looking for you since the day Chike left. He was involved in something dangerous." Her breath came fast. "What kind of dangerous?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pushed her out the back and into the small yard where the mango tree stood. "Go to Nkechi's place. Take your son and leave Lagos. Now." "Papa, I can't just go." His voice cracked. "If they catch you, I don't know what they will do. Just go." She hesitated, but the sound of the men banging on the front door made her run. She slipped out through the side gate and disappeared into the narrow streets, her heart pounding like a drum. She didn't stop until she reached Nkechi's small room in Ajigona. Somto was playing with a small plastic ball, his laughter filling the air. She hugged him tightly, burying her face in his hair. Nkechi looked at her, alarmed. "Adaeze, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." She told her everything: the wedding, the meeting with her father, the knock at the door, the strange men. Nkechi's face grew serious. "This is bad. If those men are still looking for you after 3 years, it means whatever Chike was into, it is still alive." That night, Adaeze couldn't sleep. Every sound outside the window made her jump. Every shadow seemed to move. Her mind kept circling back to her father's unfinished words: dangerous people. The next day, she went back to the compound to see him again, but when she got there, the place was silent. The front door was slightly open. "Papa," she called. No answer. She stepped inside. The parlor was empty, the chairs pushed back as if something had happened quickly. A glass lay shattered on the floor. There was no sign of him. Her heart started to race again. She checked the bedroom, the kitchen, nothing. Then she saw something on the table. A folded piece of paper with her name on it. Her hands shook as she opened it. The handwriting was hurried, almost shaky. "Adaeze, if you are reading this, it means they came back. Do not look for me. Take Somto and leave the city. Chike is not who you think he is. The people after you, they believe you have something that belongs to them. Something Chike left behind. They will not stop. Leave now." Her vision blurred with tears. She clutched the note, her mind spinning. What could she possibly have that belonged to them? She had nothing from Chike, or so she thought. And then she remembered. In the bottom of Somto's old baby bag, a bag she had never thrown away, there was a small wrapped package Chike had given her the night before he disappeared. He had told her not to open it until he came back. She had forgotten about it entirely. Her hands went cold. She rushed back to Nkechi's place, pulled the bag from the corner, and there it was, the package, still wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. It was small, but heavy. Nkechi watched her. "Are you going to open it?" Adaeze's hands hovered over the string, her heart thudding. But before she could untie it, there was a sound outside, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Then came a knock on the door. 3 slow knocks. She froze. The voice came, calm but chilling: "Adaeze, we know you have it. Open the door." Her breath caught. Nkechi looked at her with wide eyes. Somto clutched her arm, sensing her fear. The knocking came again, harder this time. She looked at the package in her hand, then at the door. Her father was gone. The men were here. And in her hand was something that could be the reason for everything. She didn't know if opening it would save her or destroy her. Slowly, she began to untie the string. And the door burst open. The door slammed against the wall with a loud bang, the sound echoing through the small room like a gunshot. Dust from the old hinges floated in the air, catching the dim sunlight that struggled through the window. Two men stepped inside. The first was the scar-faced man from her father's compound. The second was taller, his face expressionless, his eyes cold like stone. Behind them, the street outside looked suddenly empty, as though the world had pulled back to watch from a distance. "Adaeze," the scar-faced man said, his voice calm but dangerous, "we warned you. You have something of ours." Nkechi stepped forward, her hands shaking but her voice firm. "You can't just come in here. Sit down," the tall man cut her off, his tone like ice. Somto clung tighter to Adaeze's leg, his little heart pounding against her. Adaeze tried to speak, but her throat felt dry. She glanced at the package in her hands. Scarface noticed. He smiled slightly. "That's it, isn't it? The package Jack gave you." Her eyes widened. "How do you know?" "We know everything," he said, stepping closer. "And we've been waiting a long time for this moment." The tall man took a step forward, his eyes locked on the package. "Give it to us, and maybe you walk away." Adaeze's mind raced. Something in their tone told her that even if she handed it over, there was no guarantee she'd be safe. And what about her father? Did they already have him? She clutched the package tighter. "What's inside?" she asked, her voice trembling. Scarface's smile widened. "That's not for you to know." And then, without warning, the tall man reached for it. Instinct took over. Adaeze stepped back, bumping into the small wooden table. The package slipped from her hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. The sound seemed to make both men freeze for half a second. Nkechi moved fast. She scooped it up and, before they could react, tossed it to Adaeze. "Run," she shouted. Adaeze didn't think. She grabbed Somto's hand and bolted for the back door. The men shouted, chairs scraping as they moved to block her. She ducked past the kitchen, her bare feet slapping against the floor. The air outside was hot, the smell of frying akara from a nearby store hitting her as she burst into the narrow alley. She ran. Behind her, footsteps thundered. She weaved through the maze of small streets, past women selling vegetables, past children playing with worn tires. The package banged against her side as she held it tight under her arm. Her mind was screaming. She needed to disappear, to find a place they wouldn't look. Finally, she ducked into a narrow passage between two buildings, the kind of place only children and stray cats used. She pressed her back against the wall, her breath ragged, Somto clinging to her like he was part of her skin. The footsteps passed. For a moment, there was silence. Only her heartbeat filled her ears. She crouched down and looked at her son. "Somto, listen to me," she whispered. "No matter what happens, you stay close to me. Do you understand?" He nodded, his small eyes wide with fear. Slowly, she began to untie the package again. The string came loose. The brown paper crinkled under her fingers. Inside was a small metal box, about the size of her palm. It was heavy, cold to the touch, with strange markings etched into its surface. "What is this?" she muttered. Before she could inspect it further, a voice came from the mouth of the alley. "Adaeze, you really shouldn't have opened that." She looked up. It wasn't the scar-faced man. It wasn't the tall man either. It was Chike. He looked almost exactly the same confident smile, the same easy posture, but there was something in his eyes now, something sharp and calculating. "You're alive," Adaeze whispered. He smiled faintly. "And you're still as stubborn as ever." Her grip on the box tightened. "Where have you been? What is this? Why are those men after me?" Chike stepped closer, his tone low. "That box is worth more than anything you can imagine. And now that you've opened it, things are about to get very, very dangerous for you." She took a step back. What's inside it? His smile faded. If I tell you, you'll wish you never asked. He glanced toward the street. They're close. Give me the box and I can get you out of Lagos before they find you again. Her heart pounded. Could she trust him? This was the same man who had left her alone, pregnant, to face the world. And yet, something in his voice told her he was telling the truth about the danger. Before she could decide, footsteps echoed from both ends of the alley. The men had found them. Chike's eyes hardened. Choose, Adaeze. Now. She looked from him to the approaching shadows, to the box in her hand. Her breath caught. The air in the alley seemed to shrink. And then, the air in the alley was thick, almost choking. The shadows at both ends grew longer as the men closed in. Their footsteps echoed against the narrow walls, each step a warning. Chike didn't take his eyes off her. Adaeze, if you give them that box, it's over for all of us. Her fingers tightened around it. Somto pressed himself against her side, his small hands gripping her dress. The scar-faced man appeared at one end, his smile thin and cold. At the other end, the tall man blocked the light. There was no way out. Hand it over, Scarface called, his voice echoing. And maybe your son gets to go home tonight. Adaeze's chest rose and fell with quick breaths. Her eyes darted between them and Chike. You think you can trust him? Scarface sneered, jerking his chin toward Chike. He's the reason you've been running for 3 years. Ask him where he was the night he left you. Something in Chike's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Adaeze's voice trembled. Chike, tell me the truth. Were you with them? I was never with them, he said quickly. I was running from them. And from someone even worse. Scarface laughed, the sound sharp. He's lying. He stole from us, hid it in that box, and left you to take the blame without you even knowing it. The tall man stepped forward, his voice low but clear. The only reason you're alive, Adaeze, is because we didn't think you had the box. But now. Chike moved fast. He pulled something from his back pocket, a small knife, and grabbed Adaeze's arm. We are leaving, he said under his breath. Scarface shouted, don't let them run. Chaos erupted. Chike pulled her down the alley toward a side gate she hadn't noticed before. It led into a cramped backyard with lines of wet laundry and the smell of smoked fish hanging in the air. Women shouted as they dashed past, startled. They burst out onto a busy main road where yellow Danfo buses honked and Okada riders wove through traffic. The noise was deafening, but it was cover. Chike pulled her toward a waiting Kiki Pep. In, he barked. She hesitated. Do you want to see your father alive again? He snapped. Her stomach twisted. She climbed in, pulling Somto close. The Kiki roared to life, weaving through traffic as the men tried to follow on foot. Only when the road grew less crowded did Chike finally speak again. That box, it's not money. It's not gold. It's information. Names, accounts, deals, things that could destroy some very powerful people in Lagos. And outside Lagos. Adaeze stared at him. And you gave it to me without telling me. I had no choice, he said, looking out the side. You were the only person they'd never suspect. I thought I could get it back before they found out. But they found out faster than I expected. Her voice rose. Because you disappeared. You left me alone. Chike turned to face her fully. If I had stayed, they would have killed me. And then they would have come for you the same night. I ran to keep them away from you. She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. And my father? Did you go to him? Yes, Chike said quietly. I went to him the night before I left. I begged him to keep you away from me, to make you hate me if he had to. Because it was the only way to keep you alive. The Kiki jolted as it hit a pothole, the city around them blurring into markets and half-built houses. Adaeze clutched the box tighter. If this is as dangerous as you say, why not just destroy it? Chike's eyes darkened. Because the people on that list, they won't just let it go. And if it disappears, they'll assume you still have a copy. They'll never stop hunting you. She swallowed hard. So what's your plan? He leaned closer, his voice low. We disappear. Tonight. I know someone at the port who can get us out. Before she could respond, the Kiki driver shouted, Oga, police checkpoint ahead. Chike's head whipped toward the road. His face went pale. It's not the police. Adaeze followed his gaze. The men at the checkpoint weren't in uniform. They were the same ones from the alley. The Kiki slowed. Chike's voice was urgent. Adaeze, if they take me, don't let them take you. Run, no matter what happens. And don't let go of the box. The Kiki stopped. The tall man stepped forward, a slow smile on his face. End of the road. Chike's hand went to the door. Adaeze's heartbeat thundered in her ears. The tall man's eyes slid to her. Bring the box, and maybe we talk. Don't, and we take the boy. Somto's small fingers clutched her arm like they'd never let go. Adaeze's words seemed to shrink to the sound of her own breathing. She could feel every second slipping away like sand through her fingers. She looked at Chike, at her son, at the box. Then she made her decision. She moved fast. In one motion, Adaeze shoved the box into the folds of her dress, wrapped her arm tightly around Somto, and kicked open the opposite side of the Kiki. Run, she shouted. They spilled onto the dusty roadside, the heat from the asphalt hitting her face like fire. Chike jumped out after them, but the tall man was already moving, his long strides cutting through the space between them. The street erupted into chaos. Okada riders swerved. Women carrying baskets shouted as they stepped out of the way. A goat darted across the road, nearly tripping one of the men chasing her. Adaeze didn't look back. She ran, her feet pounding the ground, her son's small body bouncing against her hip. Chike was right behind, shouting directions. Left. Adaeze, left. They docked into a side street lined with mechanic workshops. The smell of engine oil and burning metal filled the air. Men in greasy overalls looked up in surprise as the three of them tore past. A loud bang echoed, not a gunshot, but something heavy falling. Someone had knocked over a stack of old car doors to block the path. For a moment, it slowed the men chasing them. They reached a narrow footbridge over a shallow canal. The wood was old and uneven, the water below dark and sluggish. Chike went first, holding out his hand to steady her. Halfway across, the bridge groaned under their weight. Somto whimpered, clutching her tightly. They made it across, but the sound of footsteps behind told her the men weren't far. Chike led them through another maze of streets until finally, they emerged onto a quiet lane near the port. Large containers towered over them, painted in faded blues and reds, their metal sides hot under the sun. This way, Chike said, leading her toward a rusted gate. My contact is inside. But just as they reached it, a shadow moved in the corner of her eye. Scarface stepped out from behind a container. You've been running all day, Adaeze. Aren't you tired? Chike froze. More men appeared, blocking the way back. The lane was silent except for the distant hum of the port. Scarface's eyes went to the hidden bulge in her dress. That box has caused enough trouble. Hand it over, and maybe we forget you exist. Adaeze's chest rose and fell, her breath shallow. She could feel Somto's heartbeat against her arm, fast and frightened. Chike stepped in front of her. If you want it, you go through me. Scarface smiled. Gladly. Two men lunged forward. Chike fought hard, faster than she'd ever seen him move, but they were too many. A blow to his side sent him sprawling against a container. Scarface advanced on her, his shadow long and sharp in the afternoon sun. Last chance. Adaeze's mind was racing. She couldn't fight them. She couldn't outrun them. And she couldn't risk Somto's life. Slowly, she reached into her dress and pulled out the box. Scarface's eyes lit up. But instead of handing it to him, she turned and hurled it as hard as she could into the dark water of the canal beyond the containers. A splash ran out. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. 2 men ran toward the water. Scarface cursed loudly. The tall man shouted orders. In the confusion, Chai grabbed her arm. Now. They ran again, weaving between containers until they found an open side gate. They spilled out onto a busy road where trucks rumbled past, the smell of diesel heavy in the air. Only when they had put several streets between themselves and the port did they finally stop. Adaeze's legs were shaking. Somto clung to her, his face buried in her neck. Chai's breathing was ragged. You just made yourself their number one enemy, he said. She met his eyes, her voice steady despite the fear still clawing at her. Maybe. But they don't have the box anymore. Chai hesitated, then shook his head. You think throwing it in the water ends it? They'll believe you have another copy. They won't stop. Not now. Not ever. Her stomach sank. Somewhere in the distance, a police siren wailed, growing louder. Chai stepped closer. We have to leave Lagos tonight. You, me, and Somto. If we stay, they'll find us. And your father, if he's still alive, they'll use him to get to you. Her voice broke. And if I refuse? He looked at her for a long moment. Then you won't live to regret it. The siren was closer now. People were starting to look their way. Adaeze glanced at her son, then at the road ahead. Somewhere out there, her father might be alive, or already gone. She knew she had only seconds to choose. With her heart pounding, she tightened her hold on Somto. And stepped forward into the unknown. That night, Lagos side cracked open with heavy rain. The sound of thunder roared across the city, drowning out the noise of traffic and generators. Adaeze sat in a dimly lit room inside a small guest house near Opopo, her son asleep on her lap. The rain drummed against the zinc roof, each drop sounding like a warning. Chai stood by the window, staring into the dark street below. His shirt was torn from the fight, and his face was swollen at the jaw. He had not spoken much since they fled the port. Finally, Adaeze broke the silence. You still haven't told me the whole truth. Who exactly are these men? And why does that box matter more than people's lives? Chai didn't turn. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me, she said, her voice firm. He exhaled slowly. That box was not just a list. It was insurance. Evidence against men in politics, business, even the police. Chai leaned closer, lowering his voice. That box could expose a network so powerful, they control what happens in Lagos every single day. That's why they never stop hunting it. Adaeze felt her stomach twist. And you thought leaving it with me, a young girl with nothing, was the smart thing to do. I thought they would never suspect you, he said sharply. Then his tone softened. I thought I'd come back for it before you even noticed. But things went wrong. Before Adaeze could answer, a sudden knock shook the guest house door. Her heart froze. The knock came again, louder this time. Chai pulled out a small torchlight, motioning for her to stay silent. The third knock was accompanied by a voice. Low. Rough. Open. Police. Adaeze's pulse raced. Police. Or those men pretending again. Chai pressed a finger to his lips, then crept toward the door. He peered through a small crack. His body stiffened. Adaeze whispered, "Who is it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he motioned for her to gather some tow and the bag. The knock came harder now, almost breaking the wood. "Police! Open before we break it down." Adaeze clutched her son and whispered in his ear, "Don't make a sound." With one sudden kick, the door burst open. 3 men entered, dressed in black raincoats. Their uniforms had faint badges, real police or fake, it was impossible to tell. "Where is it?" the first one barked. "We know you had the box." Chike blocked them, his voice hard. "She doesn't have it anymore." The man sneered. "Then you will all follow us. Someone is waiting for you." Adaeze's heart sank. Somto whimpered softly against her neck. The men moved closer. And then the light went out. The entire guest house was thrown into darkness. Thunder cracked outside. A scuffle broke out, the sound of fists, wood crashing, men shouting. Adaeze crouched low, covering her son. She couldn't see, only hear. Then a voice hissed in her ear, "Urgent. Adaeze. This way." A hand grabbed hers in the dark. It wasn't Chike's voice. The rain poured harder as Adaeze stumbled through the back of the guest house, clutching Somto tightly. The hand guiding her was strong but gentle, pulling her through a hidden passage between 2 buildings. When they finally emerged into the streetlight, she saw him. A man in his 40s, tall, with sharp eyes and a calm presence. He was dressed simply, but there was something about him that felt official. "Who are you?" Adaeze demanded, backing away slightly. "My name is Inspector Olumide," he said, showing her a badge quickly before tucking it back into his pocket. "I've been following you since yesterday. Your father asked me to find you." Her breath caught. "My father? He's alive." Olumide nodded. "Yes. But not safe. Those men took him. He's still holding on, because of you. Because they believe you have the box." Adaeze's knees almost buckled. She felt anger and relief at the same time. "Where is he? Take me to him." Olumide shook his head. "Not yet. It's not that simple. If we rush in, you both die. I need to move you first, somewhere safe." Chike suddenly appeared from the shadows, his face wet with rain and sweat. His eyes narrowed at Olumide. "Don't trust him, Adaeze. He's one of them." Olumide stepped closer, his voice firm. "Believe me or not, I'm the only chance your father has. He asked for you with his last message." Adaeze looked from Chike to Olumide. The rain plastered her dress to her skin, the cold sinking into her bones. She felt torn apart by doubt. "Why should I trust either of you?" she whispered. "Because," Olumide said, lowering his voice, "I know something only your father would tell. The night your mother died, she whispered to you in the hospital, 'Never stop singing.' Your father told me you used to sing that to yourself every night." Adaeze's eyes filled with tears. Nobody else knew that. Not even Chike. Chike swore under his breath. It could be a trick. But Adaeze's heart was leaning toward Olumide. "Where will you take me?" she asked. Olumide looked around the street, then back at her. His eyes were steady. "Somewhere they will never think to look. Somewhere only your father knows." A flash of headlights cut through the rain. A black SUV turned the corner, moving slowly, too slowly, toward them. Olumide's face hardened. "No time. Decide now. Do you come with me, or stay with him?" Adaeze clutched Somto tighter. Her whole body trembled. The SUV stopped. Its door opened. A familiar voice drifted out from the dark interior. "Adaeze." It was Baba Adeoye. Her father. Alive. But his voice sounded weak. Tired. Broken. Adaeze froze. The rain hammered harder on the street, drowning out everything except the pounding of her heart. Olimite stepped protectively in front of her. Chike moved to her side, knife still in hand. Her father's voice came again, from inside the SUV. My daughter, please. Come with them. Give them what they want. Adaeze's breath caught. Her father was alive. But, why was he telling her to surrender? The men in the SUV began to step out. And Adaeze realized she had only one choice to make, and no matter what she decided, someone she loved might die tonight. The rain pounded harder on the street, turning Lagos into a blur of shadows and water. Adaeze stood frozen, her son trembling in her arms, while the black SUV loomed before her like a beast waiting to swallow them whole. Come with them, her father's voice begged again, weak and broken. Give them what they want. Adaeze's heart twisted. She had dreamed of hearing his voice again, of seeing him alive, but now that moment had come in the most terrible way. Olimite stepped forward, shielding her with his body. Don't listen, Adaeze. They are forcing him to say this. Chike clenched his jaw, his hand tight on the knife. They'll use your father until you give in. If you walk to that car, you and Somto are finished. Her father coughed, his voice straining through the night. My daughter, forgive me. Don't come. Adaeze's knees almost buckled. She wanted to run to him, to pull him out, to hold him like the little girl she once was. But she saw it in his voice, the pain, the chains they had put on him. And in that moment, she remembered her mother's words, never stop singing. Adaeze closed her eyes and began to hum softly, even through the rain. A gentle tune, shaky at first, but it grew stronger. Somto looked up at her, eyes wide, and whispered, Mama, song. She nodded and sang louder, her voice cutting through the storm. It was a lullaby. The same one her mother used to sing in the hospital. The same one she had sung to Somto when he cried at night. The effect was strange. The men stepping out of the SUV hesitated. Even Scarface, who had emerged behind them, frowned in confusion. And then, from inside the car, Baba Adaeze began to sing with her. His weak voice joined hers, trembling but alive. That moment broke something in the air. Olimite shouted, now, and from the corners of the street, headlights flashed. 2 police trucks roared in, sirens blaring, tires splashing water as armed officers jumped out. Real ones this time. The men in the SUV panicked, trying to drag Baba Adaeze back inside, but the police surrounded them in seconds. Shouts filled the air, commands were barked, guns raised. Scarface tried to run, but Chike lunged, tackling him into the mud. Adaeze stood frozen, her lullaby fading into sobs as she saw her father pulled from the car, rain washing the blood from his face. Papa, she screamed. He stumbled forward, supported by 2 officers, his eyes finding hers through the storm. Adaeze, my Adaeze. She ran to him, Somto still clinging to her side. When she reached him, she dropped to her knees in the water and wrapped her free arm around his shaking body. Father. Daughter. Grandson. 3 generations, holding each other in the rain. For the first time in years, Adaeze felt whole. Weeks later, the sun rose gently over Lagos. The noise of danfos honking, women selling akara by the roadside, children in school uniforms laughing. Life went on. Inside Baba Adaeze's compound, repaired after years of abandonment, laughter spilled into the yard. Adaeze was cooking with her father, the smell of jollof rice drifting through the air. Somto chased a chicken around the yard, giggling loudly. Chike leaned against the wall, his side still bandaged but smiling for the first time since she met him. Olimite sat nearby, sipping palm wine, his eyes relaxed at last. The network that had haunted them was finally broken, exposed by the police raid. Scarface and his men were locked away. The box, retrieved from the canal, had been handed to the authorities, and the truth inside had shaken powerful men to their knees. But for Adaeze, none of that mattered now. What mattered was the peace in her father's eyes as he held Somto on his lap. What mattered was the sound of family, laughter, food, life. That night, as the cricket sang outside, Adaeze sat by the window, watching the stars. She thought about the journey, the pain, the fear, the loss. And she thought about the song her mother had left her. She began to hum it softly, smiling to herself. Her father's voice joined from the next room, low but steady. Somto's small voice joined too, off-key but sweet. For the first time in years, the Adaeze house was filled with music again. And in that moment, Adaeze knew the storm was over.